Hello and welcome, beautiful friends. I'm Kendra, and you're listening to the Renewed Minds Podcast, the show where people can be heard, known, and cherished for their own mental health story. Hello and welcome, sweet friends. First of all, thank you for being here and joining me on this new adventure. A couple of months ago, Jesus invited me into partnering with him to start this little podcast. So this is all his idea. I'm simply just taking the steps to accomplish it. So the plan is to interview women and maybe even men with powerful testimonies of how Jesus has brought them through their own mental health journey. So if you have a story, please reach out. Do not hesitate to contact me via social media, phone, email. I'll list everything in the show notes below. But seriously, testimonies are powerful. Your story might be the key to someone else's victory. Let's start to bring more light to this dark mental health crisis, and we can overcome mental health battles together. So today, I thought I would share my own testimony so that we can all get acquainted and you can know where I'm coming from. I want to preface this testimony that there may be some triggering information if you are in a dark season. I do hope you will continue to listen because it ends with how I got free from everything, and you can too. So I'm Kendra Ashley Lees, maiden name Stutters. First things first, I'm completely obsessed with Jesus. One might call me a Jesus freak. He has had my heart for a long time, since I was 4 years old. I'm also a wife to my handsome and muscular husband, who's an arborist, and we just celebrated our 10-year anniversary. I'm a homeschool mom of 3 amazing kids who are loud and proud, and I'm just so fond of them. They're my little besties that really know how to push my buttons. We've had lots of laughs, tears, and adventures together. I'm always up to something. So right now I'm launching a podcast, but I'm also writing a book, mental health life coaching, bookkeeping, co-leading a women's group, doing evangelism weekly, working out daily, and taking care of my garden. It sounds like a lot coming out of my mouth, but I'm so excited to share it, and I'm so blessed because this time last year, I could not do those things. Last year, I got healed of chronic fatigue. So I have energy. Jesus gave me energy. Now I get to do all the things that I never thought I could. And I just have so much gratefulness in my heart, so much gratitude towards him for loving me so well. I love to sing, paint, and draw, but I don't get to nearly as often as I would like to. I love fashion, beauty, the beach, and food. My current obsession right now is color analysis. So if you catch me staring at you deep in thought, it's probably me analyzing which season you're in. One of my accomplishments I'm proud of is that I have my first year of biblical Hebrew, so I can read and write in Hebrew. I'm a huge nerd. That's a little bit about me, but my story is what I want to share with you all today. So I'm just going to dive right in. I grew up in a loving Christian home. I asked Jesus to come live in my heart with my dad when I was 4 years old. My parents reported that I thought my voice would change. Clearly, I understood the concept really well. When I was 6, I went to Mexico with my dad. When we got to Mexican customs, they separated me from my dad because they thought he was kidnapping me because he didn't have a written permission note from my mom. So I was put in a room with a big Mexican man with a machine gun on his hip. It was terrifying. I cried the whole time. My grandpa had told me that they were going to fight for me, and I thought like that meant actually fight, like fist fight. There's a lot for a 6-year-old. Eventually, my dad did get a hold of my mom. She'd stayed in Vancouver with family after dropping us off at the airport. And in the age of phone books, this was super stressful to track her down. After all, that they did let us stay. That separation was super traumatic for me. I was made to feel very unsafe and uncertain about what the future would hold. From then on, I really struggled with feeling safe with loved ones. I always felt lonely, like there was a big hole in my heart, even as a kid. Moving on, when I was 8 years old, I was sexually abused. I immediately went and told my mom, and the way she responded made me think that I had done something wrong. So I cried. Um, Nothing against my mom. She did an amazing job raising me. Um, it's just, as a kid, that's just how I interpreted it. I felt very alone and brokenhearted and very unlovable. After that, I viewed the world entirely differently, very differently. It felt like I didn't know how to relate to anyone, my parents, my friends, siblings, aunts and uncles, and I had an extremely hard time making friends. Felt all alone. I retreated into reading books all of the time. I lost myself in the stories. I struggled with confidence, body image, and insecurities. When I made it to grade 7, things did start to turn around for me spiritually. I got plugged into a youth group and that had leaders who loved me really well. I all of a sudden felt seen and heard. They were inspiring to me because they loved Jesus so much and I wanted to have that too. I was walking home from school in grade 8 and it occurred to me that I hadn't prayed all day. I felt my soul really crave that kind of relationship. It's that constant relationship with Him. I started reading my Bible. I have to laugh thinking about it because it was like reading a foreign language. I felt like I couldn't catch anything and everything went over my head. But I knew it was beneficial, so I read it every day. That's when my walk with Jesus really started to take off. I learned so much from my youth leaders and had lots of really good chats with my dad about Jesus and the Bible. I got hooked on camp ministry in grade 10 at a camp in the Yukon, and I have served at camp every year in some capacity since then. Even with all those awesome experiences at youth group, I still struggled with major insecurities, disordered eating, and sexual purity. I met my husband 2 weeks after I graduated high school at a Bible camp. We weren't supposed to start dating until the summer was over, but we definitely started dating 4 days after we met each other. We dated for a year, and then a year and a bit, and were engaged for 4 months. I was 19 and he was 20. I look back and think, wow, we were so young. But I remember thinking we were so old and so mature. I had my first panic attack the day of my bridal shower. It wasn't about getting married. I was just so stressed out about wedding planning, and it had just all gotten to me, and I totally melted down. I didn't really know much about mental health. Definitely was completely unaware of the fact that I struggled with it, and probably had struggled with it for a long time. So our first year of marriage was really hard. I now had someone who saw all my flaws. I'd always prided myself on being the put together Christian girl, and hated now that someone saw through it all. Marriage is a refining fire. It was just two selfish kids that had to learn to put someone else's needs before their own. So a lot of ugliness came out of my heart because now I had someone who was safe and committed to me, and I could just be the worst too. And they would still love me and forgive me. It was extremely humbling and very hard. We hadn't even celebrated our first anniversary, and we found out that we had an unplanned pregnancy. We were pretty shocked, but also so excited. After a couple of weeks, the excitement wore off because I started puking 20 times a day. I was no longer Kendra. I was nauseous. My whole identity became that, and it was all consuming. I couldn't escape it. I was in and out of the hospital trying to stay hydrated, and I spent that pregnancy in bed. We had a beautiful baby boy early because I had developed severe preeclampsia. He was really sick that first week of his life, but we were so in love. I was a new mom, and I remember vividly getting up that first night realizing I can no longer be selfish and I have to sacrifice my sleep and my life just to take care of this precious little one. It was a hard adjustment, but it was totally worth it. It was so fun that year having a little sidekick that just came around with me everywhere. We found out we had another unplanned pregnancy not even a year later, and I cried because I knew how bad it was going to be. And now I have a toddler to look after. Sure enough, I got so sick again, and it was brutal. We also made the big life decision to commit to camp ministry full time, and we landed at Morning Star Bible Camp. During this time, I became suicidal. I even Googled if there was a way to die without harming my baby. I finally told Cody, and he did not handle it well. I delivered our little baby girl, and I was so mentally unwell. I had started cutting too. 5 months later, I was so suicidal that I had a plan. Cody took me to the hospital. I was admitted to the psych ward and worked with a psychiatrist every day. They put me on an antidepressant. I left the hospital with very little understanding of what had just happened or any real help at all. Sure enough, I was readmitted a month later because I was still very sick. They put me on a bipolar med because I was presenting with manic depressive episodes, anxiety, and psychosis. I wasn't really, though. I was just describing the spiritual world that was very real to me. They looked at me so funny when I would tell them I would communicate with Jesus. They're like, yeah, this girl needs to be medicated. And it was very hard on Cody. We had 2 small children, and Sadie was primarily breastfed, so we had to switch her to a bottle. I was on the Seroquel drug for about 6 months until I weaned myself off of it, against my psychiatrist's advisement, because I hated how I felt on it. It made me sleep for, I'm not even kidding, 17 hours, like give or take, a day. I couldn't be a mom and I couldn't be a wife on this drug, so I weaned myself off of it, and it sucked. I threw myself into a whole lifestyle upheaval. I started eating differently, working out, supplements, holistic approaches, working with counselor, therapists, and yet I would still have more bad days than good days. My marriage struggled. We were always fighting. About a year later, I learned about Dr. Caroline Leaf's work. Cody and I decided it would be worth the money, so I started Dr. Caroline Leaf's neurocycle program. It's all about rewiring your brain to improve your mental health. I did about 6 cycles and started to see some freedom from it. I no longer walked around repeating hateful thoughts to myself, but started growing healthy thoughts. Still, a few years later, I was still having more bad days than good days. And I asked Jesus, like Rebecca in Genesis, Lord, why am I like this? And he answered me so clearly and said, you have not invited me into this struggle. I immediately repented and invited him into the struggle and asked for strategy on how to overcome this mental health battle once and for all. A while later, a friend recommended an app called Pause, created by the author John Eldredge. It was all about pausing once or twice in your day and giving everything to Jesus, everything that's in your heart and soul and mind to him. It had a 30-day challenge, and it was 2 30-minute pauses that were focused on communing with Jesus in a secret place. Almost immediately, I started to realize quickly that this was the strategy Jesus was giving me to combat my mental health battles. The strategy was this, and it's so basic. Going to Jesus with my mental health every single time. Inviting him into it every single time. Every thought taken captive. Every single thought. Every single time. Casting all my cares. Every single care. Inviting him into every emotion. Every single emotion. Every single time. Within 30 days, I sensed a shift in my soul. It was being unburdened and set free from poor mental health. Each time I brought an emotion or a thought to Jesus, he would replace it with something else, something from him. A new thought, a verse, a gift, or even just a hug sometimes would do the trick. A big one for me was bringing my fears of what other people think of me and asking him, Lord, what do you think about me? And he was faithful to answer me every single time. Usually with beloved or chosen or accepted, Rose of Sharon, Lily of the Valley. He was faithful to answer me every single time. Through communing with Jesus by way of Holy Spirit and through his word, I can confidently say that I have been completely set free from mental health, from poor mental health. It was nothing I could do in my strength, no supplement that could magically fix, deep breathing or medication. It was him, the wonderful counselor and the great physician. He healed my mental health. I've been completely set free and delivered from depression, anxiety, insecurities, rage, shame, all of it. The list goes on. My relationships have deepened and my marriage has been the best it has ever been. All because I learned to go to Jesus with everything, including my mental health. I'm going to be honest. There are things that come up in my life that seem to try and bring me back down the poor mental health spiral. But I will always run to Jesus with it. And what might have taken me out for a day or a week can be cleared up with Jesus in an hour. Life is going to throw us all sorts of hard circumstances, but I am confident in Him that I won't be shaken when life storms come our way, because my firm foundation is built on Him. I won't be tossed around like a wave tossed around in the sea, because my mind has been renewed and grounded in Him. I've been completely transformed by the renewing of my mind by simply going to Him every single time. So this is why I'm starting this podcast. This is my passion project. I want to share that you can experience full freedom from poor mental health through Jesus, our wonderful counselor. If this testimony has touched you today, please share it with your friends. If you know a sister who is struggling right now with her mental health, please pass this along to her. If you know that your story needs to be shared on this podcast, please do not hesitate to contact me. I want to interview you. Your story is powerful and needs to be heard. So let's spread the hope that Jesus brings with more testimonies of renewed minds with everyone who needs to hear it. Also, please check out my Instagram page at Blessed by Grace Coach. If you need prayer, please do not hesitate to reach out and send me your prayer requests. Okay. Thank you for making it all the way through with me today. I'm excited for what Jesus has in store for this podcast and for the lives it's going to change. As always, please remember, you are not alone and you are loved.